2.1 Theme 2 Psychology and Sociology Lesson 2.1 Vocabulary for Listening. What groups do you belong to? Exercise B2. Listen. Complete the text below with words from the list on the right. Make any necessary changes.
A person is an individual. Psychology is about individuals. Psychologists ask questions like, what is the mind? How does it control human behavior? People have relationships with other people. Sociology is about human behavior in groups. Sociologists ask questions like, why do people form groups? Why do groups sometimes behave badly? In the diagram, the circle for my family is separate from the other three circles. Why? Because my family is different from my friends, my neighbors, and my colleagues. Why are these three circles linked? Because some of my friends live in my neighborhood, and some of my friends are also my colleagues. Sociologists call the four inner circles the primary groups. The people in your primary groups are very important to you.
(2.2) Exercise C2. Listen to a student explaining one word in each pair. Tick the word.
1. Oh, that's the person. You know, the person who studies human behavior. 2. Well, it's a science. It's the study of the mind, I think. 3. That's where children go, from about 5 to 11 years, isn't it? 4. It's a physical part of your body, the organ in your head. 5. It's everyone in the world. We are thinking of them as one group. 6. Well, I think it means one person.
(2.3) Lesson 2.2 Real-Time Listening. An Introduction to Sociology.
In this lecture, I'm going to talk about sociology. Now, firstly, I'm going to mention the aims of the science. Secondly, I'll give a little bit of history, some key names and quotes from each person. Finally, I'm going to talk about sociology today. So, first, sociology has three main aims. Firstly, sociologists study human behavior in groups. Now, they ask the question, how do people behave in groups? Secondly, they try to understand human behavior in groups. They ask the question, why do they behave in those ways? Finally, they try to predict human behavior in groups. Now, they ask the question, how will people behave in groups in certain situations? In 1838, a Frenchman called Auguste Comte used the word sociology for the first time. Today, Comte is often called the father of sociology. Now, he said, human behavior has rules and patterns. So the name sociology is quite new, but interest in human behavior is very, very old. For example, in the 4th century BCE, Plato had ideas about people and groups. Now, he said, people live in groups for friendship. They also live in groups for safety. Groups must have rules of behavior. Nearly 2,000 years later, in the 14th century, in Tunisia, a man called Ibn Khaldun wrote about people in groups. He said, groups are like animals. They are born, they grow, and then they die. This happens to all groups. In the 19th century, Auguste Comte used the term sociology. Perhaps you did not know the name of Comte, but I'm sure you know the name of the next man. In 1848, Karl Marx, a German, wrote a famous book. At that time, there was a lot of unrest in many countries. Poor people were unhappy. They started to fight for their rights. Marx wrote about this situation. He said, people from different groups must fight each other. In 1904, another German, Max Weber, said, there are three important things for groups. They are religion, work, and money. In the past, we called people like Plato and Ibn Khaldun philosophers. These days, we call them sociologists. In the 1960s, sociology became an important subject. Today, pupils even study sociology at secondary school. They look at the ideas of modern sociologists like Anthony Giddens. He wrote a famous book in 1984. He says, people make groups, but then the groups make people. The relationship between the individual and the group works in both directions.
Lesson 2.3 Learning new listening skills. Recognizing time signposts. Exercise A2. Listen. Tick the word you hear in each case.
A. Nowadays we call the study of groups sociology. B. We are all part of the human race. C. Sociologists study human behavior. D. People lived together for friendship. E. They also wanted to feel safe. F. Would you like to study sociology? G. What are the main aims of the course? H. What did the people say? I. There was a lot of unrest about rights. J. According to Plato, groups must have rules of behavior.
Exercise C. Listen to sentences from other lectures. Is each sentence about the past or the present? 1. In 1789, there were a lot of changes in France. 2. In the 1970s, there was a lot of research into sociology. 3. At one time, people thought the mind was in the heart. 4. Later, scientists found that the brain controlled the body. 5. Nowadays, a lot of sociologists talk about the philosopher Confucius. 6. Today, university students study philosophers from ancient Greece. 7. In the 19th century, the term gender studies didn't exist. 8. In 1904, Weber wrote a famous book. Exercise D3. Listen and check your answers.
A. Do you all have a book? B. Let me start with C. It's an important part of the topic. D. He's called the father of sociology. E. He began writing in 1957. F. It's important to understand this.
2.7. Lesson 2.4 Grammar for Listening. Recognizing past time sentences. Exercise A1. Listen to some verbs. Say present or past in each case.
1. Are. 2. Were. 3. Became. 4. Become. 5. Go. 6. Went. 7. Grew. 8. Grow. 9. Had. 10. Have.
.8 Exercise A2. Listen to some sentences. Say present or past in each case.
1. He's a sociologist. 2. He was a psychologist. 3. They knew the answer. 4. We know the reason. 5. I made a mistake. 6. They thought about important questions. 7. People say sociology is not a real science. 8. Most of the students take 2 main subjects. 9. The assignment was difficult. 10. He did experiments to check his ideas.
.9 Exercise B1. Listen to some verbs. Say present or past in each case.
1. Predict. 2. Predicted. 3. Contribute. 4. Graduated. 5. Collected. 6. Deleted. 7. Contributed. 8. Record. 9. Delete. 10. Edited. 11. Collect. 12. Graduate. 13. Edit. 14. Recorded.
.10 Exercise B2. Listen to the same verbs in sentences. Say present or past in each case.
1. We predicted the results. 2. I contribute to tutorials. 3. They graduate in the summer. 4. We collected a lot of data. 5. The scientists record their results in a table. 6. I edited my work.
2.11 Exercise C1. Listen to some sentences. Say present or past or I don't know in each case. 1. They called these people philosophers. 2. The problems happened lots of times. 3. Scientists analyzed data. 4. Some students dropped geography. 5. They managed 3 shops. 6. Many students plagiarized the articles on Wikipedia. .12 Exercise C2. Listen to the same sentences with time expressions. Say present or past or I don't know in each case.
1. At one time, they called these people philosophers. 2. In the past, the problems happened lots of times. 3. Nowadays, scientists analyze data. 4. Every year, some students drop geography. 5. In the 1990s, they managed 3 shops. 6. Today, many students plagiarize the articles on Wikipedia.
(2.13) Lesson 2.5 Applying New Listening Skills. An Introduction to Psychology. Exercise A. Listen and complete the phrases.
1. Human behaviour. 2. Modern sociologists. 3. Important people. 4. 20th century. 5. Main aims. 6. Famous book. 7. People in groups. 8. In the past.
(2.14)
In today's talk, I'm going to answer some very basic questions about psychology. First, what is it? Secondly, how does psychology help us in our day-to-day lives? Finally, who are the important names in the history of psychology? Okay, let's answer the first question. What is psychology? Psychology is the study of the mind. It is not the study of the brain. The brain is physical. You can see a brain. You can touch it. You can even cut it open. The mind is in the brain, but you can't see it or touch it. We now believe that the mind controls our behavior, so psychologists study the human mind. Then they try to understand human behavior. We must understand the mind. Then we can understand the way we think. We can understand the things we say. We can understand the things we do.
(2.15)
A long time ago, in the 4th century BCE, the Greek philosopher Aristotle wrote the first book about the mind. It was called Parapsyche. Psyche means mind in ancient Greek. Para means about. In the 17th century, Locke in England and Descartes in France asked the same question. How do the mind and the body work together? At that time, we called these people philosophers, not psychologists. They thought about important questions, but they did not do scientific experiments. In 1879, a German scientist, Wilhelm Wundt, opened the first psychology school. The science of psychology was born. At the end of the 19th century, Ivan Pavlov in Russia asked the question, how do people learn? He did experiments to check his ideas. In the early 1900s, Sigmund Freud in Germany asked, what do dreams mean? At the same time, Watson, an American, said, we can only study behavior. We cannot study the mind. But in 1967, Ulrich Nietzsche said, we must study the mind. It was the start of cognitive psychology. Cognitive means knowing.
2.16.
Finally, I want to mention three modern psychologists. Elizabeth Loftus was born in 1944. In 1970, she obtained a PhD in psychology. At that time, she was interested in learning. But in 1974, she started to study memory. Today, she works with the police in criminal cases. Steven Pinker was born in 1954. In 1979, he obtained his doctorate in psychology. In 1994, Pinker wrote a famous book called The Language Instinct. At that time, he was a psychology teacher. Today, he does a lot of research into language and the mind. Elizabeth Spelker was born in 1949. In the 1980s, she carried out experiments on babies and young children. In 2000, Elizabeth Spelker described new ideas about the minds of babies. Today, she teaches psychology in the USA.